Good.
All right. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Good morning or good evening, where we are. If you're in India, I believe it is good evening. For me, it is still morning here in Michigan, in the United States. But welcome to this session of the India Cloud Security Summit. First and foremost, I want to thank all the organizers for inviting me to present to you today, as well as all the sponsors that you see on the screen: Microsoft, Panthara, Rapid Circle, Sisto 365, and Avanade. I know that without the organizers and without the sponsors, these types of conferences can't be brought to you in such a wide scale. Really global scale here today. So thanks to all of you. Uh, you know, Great one day event. Don't forget to about the great quiz and great prizes that are being offered for this. Again, probably sponsorship is key to being able to offer these fun things to you. And this conference is also supporting a great cause to help others, and the giving is receiving cause. So please donate and support a great charity. So uh, you are in the session for why low code no code doesn't mean low no security. My name is Dwayne Natwick. And I'll tell you a little bit about myself here in a couple slides, but welcome to this session. Uh, Myself, I am a global principal cloud security lead at Atos, a GSI and Microsoft partner, as well as other hyperscalers. I am a Microsoft MVP for Azure. I'm also looking to be working right now to be recategorized in the security area as well. I'm also an AWS community builder for security and identity. So I do a lot of community work from a hyperscaler perspective. You can follow me on Twitter. I am at Dwayne N Cloud, or find me on LinkedIn. I also have published some security exam books around Microsoft exams, and you can find those at this link as well. So we're going to talk about today here is the low code, no code landscape. I know, if you've been around, especially some of the Microsoft Ignites the last few years, Satya has talked about, the citizen developer. This year's whole theme was do more with less. So, with that comes some security concerns. So we're going to talk about how we can do that and some ways and some methods to, as a security professional, help to make sure that you maintain a level of governance over these low code, no code types of application deployments. So what does that mean? A lot of security challenges out there right now. We're a lot of power platform, power apps. Um, you know, the ability to utilize infrastructure as code. All of those areas, we're really democratizing IT with the cloud services. It's more accessible to everyone. Anybody that can read some documentation can get an application up and running in Power Platform. The IT and business functions are fusing together. There's that operation cost model makes it very easy to begin to adapt and adopt to cloud services. We don't we We're no longer is IT. I mean, maybe not no longer, but IT's seen as a business function a lot more often now than an expense and overhead as it may have been in the past. The GUI-driven low-code development platforms, those citizen developers, apps driven by departmental needs rather than overall business and IT needs. A business needs an application to, maybe just for driving a Power BI dashboard and gaining some level of traction for supporting customers. They can very easily do that in the Power Platform environment. So what becomes the main challenge, and why I'm here speaking to you today, is the ability to govern and secure that data. Then, because obviously, if we as a business start utilizing these low code, no code application capabilities, like Power Platform and others, to drive application development, we as security personnel and security operations and practitioners and architects need to understand how we're going to protect that data, how we're going to protect PII and PHI and all of that personal information, and sensitive data that might be now flowing into your data ecosystem without and without as much of a upfront uh, focus from an IT department. So we need to work to insert ourselves into that. So what are some things we need to think about here in terms of that disconnect and what that disconnect is? The security mindset is changing. We're a developer or a department that has somebody developing an application may not have that security mindset. It's decreasing the awareness of what the corporate and company baselines are and the policies with during the development phase, and where there might be vulnerabilities, where there might be potential for attacks, becomes very difficult and creates that lack of visibility from an IT perspective. So now we're introducing shadow IT to the organization, and we need to have organizational controls and reviews on that governance, and making sure that these low code, no code applications are being governed by the same benchmark and baselines that we have as an overall security organization. The lack of knowledge of where data sources are coming from or going to is causes a potential issue in how that data is governed, how it's managed, how it's processed, how it's classified. We don't have as much of visibility within the IT security organization around that data, unless we put some barriers and some parameters in place. And the final piece on this particular side is compliance and auditability. If we have a lack of visibility, if department application development is embraced and data governance isn't applied, then we have a problem with compliance and auditability. If we are a healthcare organization, or we're doing maybe we're building an app that's processing some sort of payment and there's credit card information going in there, or we are an organization that in the EU and need to have GDPR in place. It makes it more difficult to govern over that and to maintain the level of compliance and be able to audit appropriately against these applications. So, increased visibility. What do we need? What do we need to do to increase that level of visibility? We have cloud security solutions that can do this, right? We want to use things like a cloud access security broker. We want to have that secure edge capability, secure application at the edge. We want to have some level of posture management in our overall organization that is triggering some level of compliance, some level of auditability, some level of capturing of these applications as they come online. And we want to control that shadow IT, protect the data, and avoid critical system breaches. So that's really what we need to do as a security organization within a company that is beginning to look at these low code, no code capabilities and embracing that, we need to insert ourselves as security professionals into that discussion to make sure that these are all still within the purview of, to use a Microsoft term, compliance service, but it is apt that they name their compliance service purview, because we want to maintain the look and feel in that horizon of security, that we are controlling it and we're looking at it. So first recommendation, first thing that we got to take into account, and I do a lot of discussions around defense in depth strategy. And when we look at the defense in depth, we've got our physical layer, we've got our identity and access layer, we've got our perimeter, our network, our compute, our application, and our data layers. We're talking about cloud infrastructure. We don't have control or any real access to physical layer in Microsoft or another cloud provider. So we want to handle identities and secrets, and really handle those with care, and what we need to do in terms of that first line of defense. And we need to control access to the applications and databases. And so we should have some rules and parameters in place in terms of how that takes place within our low code, no code applications. Identities and secrets control that access to the applications and the databases. So however that application is being created, there should be some conversation and planning around who gains access to what and what that is. And if we don't do that, breaches occur, and when we don't handle that properly. So how do we address that, and what is some of those challenges in terms of low code? Misunderstanding of that full access scope. If a departmental developer is developing a code strictly for that department, they don't understand uh, holistically the impact of improper access to the entire organization. They're very focused on a single application, a single use case, and who needs to access that. But if we need to make sure that we are protecting against leaked credentials and secrets. We want the user credentials and the permissions of those secrets, role assignments, principles of least privilege to all be in place, uh, and in the scope. So we want to make sure that we're obscuring those applications, the application secrets, the application keys should all be utilizing something like Azure Key Vault. We want to use privileged access and use something like PIM to use just in time and just enough access, and use zero trust methods to implement those zero trust methods and those decision-based methods like conditional access policies, to enforce a level of verification and that zero trust within the organization, to make sure that there isn't any types of attacks, and the vulnerabilities aren't exploited within our organization. And you'll see this point probably throughout the presentation, or I'll bring it up multiple times: documentation, and having it documented as standard security practices that is given to all of these departments, that when you're developing an application, that they are utilizing and using those as a guideline to how they are going to develop. And you have those practices, work with the business end, work with those departments, and all of the stakeholders within the organization, to document standard security practices that meet your baseline goals and your benchmark security practices that might be needed for compliance and auditability and all of those things. And just from a basic standpoint, uh, that is part of the overall security of your organization. Segmentate. So as we talk about defense in depth, and we'll talk about it again in the next slide, but segmentation and configuration is key. We talk about identity. We're going to go down another layer here of that defense in depth. So we're protecting that perimeter. We're looking, we've got identity, and it's not the only defense, and it's not 100% foolproof. I could have another hour-long conversation with you about protecting identities and what you need to do to protect identities in the cloud as we get as we are utilizing modern authentication and cloud identity providers. Um, there's an inherent risk to that. Especially if you're not using something like multi-factor authentication. But we've also found recently that multi-factor authentication is not the be-all end-all to securing identity either. They're again planning, documentation, training, all of the change management, all are important things around identity. So if an identity does get compromised, if that is our only aspect of protecting our applications and our data, we are not doing our due diligence and our due care. So we want to make sure we're looking and we are implementing zero trust across a defense in depth methodology. And doing that, we look at our perimeter and our network next. How are we protecting what's coming in, and then within what's coming in, that's the identity and access piece. Once somebody is in, how do we protect from lateral movement and exfiltration at that point? And, two slides, hold on, there we go. So what we do there is segmentation and creating barriers. We want to make sure that if somebody is developing an application, there's a level of segmentation in how they build that barrier, how they create that barrier, what where sensitive and confidential information lies should be protected. We need to identify, and a key to that is identifying that information. We need to make sure we are identifying what is sensitive information, classifying that information, and then using some sort of data loss prevention technique or solution to make sure that there is no data leakage on that, putting policies on that data, but also segmenting that data and moving that data to if it's on a database, moving that database or segmenting that database to another virtual network within our cloud environment, our cloud infrastructure, to avoid any types of data leakage, or somebody that's coming in from the public and accessing that public virtual network cannot find their way into that sensitive data VNet as well. Separate, and that goes along this point of separating all public and private information. We don't want those networks of private, only specific to our business needs, that only internal users access, should not be intermingled and included on the same network that people are coming through our website or coming through these low code, no code applications. Protecting databases from being exposed to the internet. Don't have public IP addresses on our compute infrastructure and our database infrastructure. Utilizing appliances and tools within the cloud, virtual appliances in this case, like load balancers that don't have an operating system on them that somebody can leverage and exploit for an attack. And then this last point here is avoiding configuration errors, testing code and testing these applications before they go online. And this kind of leads into our next point of staying sharp, doing testing. And there's multiple ways to doing testing. And why we would do this testing is to identify any of those configuration errors. We shouldn't be putting an application into production until we have diligently tested and gone through a documented process and procedure, through secure, through secure development lifecycle, or DevSecOps, as is kind of becoming a blurry term at this point, but that DevSecOps approach of continuously testing, continuously making sure there are no API or code-based vulnerabilities where there are common attacks like cross-site scripting or injection attacks that might come in and exploit those vulnerabilities and get into our systems, and again, then go through the whole lateral movement, and then ultimately possibly gain access and be able to steal data from our organization. And how do we do that? Two types of popular testing is static and dynamic testing. We should be going through some level of testing of the code, and this is if we are writing code from scratch. There are testing capabilities, I believe, for low code and no code as well. Going through that eye test, also going through some sort of active level of testing, where we have, maybe we have a focus group of users that test, and we then look to see what the issue is. Maybe even we have a process and procedure when one of these low code, no code applications are created, that we have a process and procedure where this needs to go through proper testing through IT. Static testing is a quick, or not necessarily a quick test, but it's a review of the code. It's really just an eye test. It identifies any kind of those configuration errors. Will not identify vulnerabilities, however, because you have to really be in an active mode on that application to understand really where the vulnerabilities lie. But you can find potential errors where maybe a secret's exposed, or there's a key that might be exposed. Dynamic testing is more of a black box. We put actual data in production, and then identify vulnerabilities by reviewing it while it's running. Should, like, last point here, shouldn't put the active sensitive data in place, but something that's useful to see if somebody can gain access to it, but that isn't going to be harmful in case, because ultimately what you're doing is you're putting this application online. And when you put this application online, attackers are like, oh, great, a fresh application to try and attack. So we want to make sure that while we're doing our testing, that we aren't also creating a vulnerability that an attacker can exploit and gain access to some level of sensitive information. Use information that is dummy, that is null information or dummy information that isn't going to cause any kind of data breach. Next piece is data handling and access. In this, I've hit on this a little bit already. The key challenges here have to do a lot with knowing your data and protecting your data. Again, if we don't know what data we have and what data is being accessed, we've created a potential issue. So what we need to do is make sure that we are working as security personnel with a documented process for labeling and classifying data, and overall, just to kind of put a broad brush on everything that I'm talking about here today. Overall, a key component and a key aspect is education and planning. If we aren't educating our organization, if we aren't creating a process and a plan for how this application development and how data handling is taking place, we are creating a vulnerability in our organization just from the start. So if we have a documented process and we have policies in place on how data is handled and how data is classified and marked within our organization, then it makes it much easier to protect our data. And then once we know our data, we can protect it with sensitive labels and confident, and mark them as confidential, create then policies to avoid then the exposure of that data. And again, good big part of putting a data loss prevention policy in place is again training your users about that type of data and what might be a potential issue in sharing that data, and alerting them, and blocking that, or requiring encryption if that data is being shared. Having the auditability then and monitoring of that data becomes very important and very and a key part of securing our data. And that goes into that auditability of logging, monitoring, and management of the organization. So, you know, what are we trying to do? And as we've gone through this process of protecting our data, of protecting our identities, our keys and secrets, and we've got this all documented. We've educated our organization on how to properly create these applications, how to properly develop and properly secure, and have a proper security methodology in place that they should be following. But that doesn't end there. We now need to have the way to log, monitor, and manage those applications. So we need to make sure that we're identifying when those applications go online. We are uh, then having that data and that information go through a logging or a mechanism for uh, aggregating those logs, aggregating all of that information into a SIM or source solution to analyze and find and utilize those analytics capabilities to find potential anonymous activities, identify potential data breaches and threats, and maintain the protection within our organization. We can't find everything during the development process, and not only can we not find everything in the development process, we also cannot necessarily uh, necessarily protect against and identify what all of the potential threats and vulnerabilities might be, because our attackers are gaining more knowledge and gaining more information by the day. So we need to also continuously monitor and also continuously improve. And that's really where that DevSecOps approach starts to take hold, is there's a continuous compliance, a continuous security assessment that takes place uh, once an application goes into production, because cloud providers change their environment. They change how things are done, change connection points, may change how APIs are handled as their services evolve. So we need to keep our eye on the ball, keep ourselves in tune to the fact that things change, and that we need to maintain a level of compliance and continuously watch for maintaining compliant technologies as we go through. So what can you do? I've kind of pointed a lot of that out as we've gone through those steps and gone through those stages. What as a security team, what as an organization are we doing? You as a security team are essentially held responsible for preventing and protecting and preserving those applications and those data, not to and not not um, causing or having a data breach within your organization. You are, if there is a breach that takes place, it's going to fall on you. So you need to be responsible for that. You need to keep your eye on the ball, keep your, just to use a sports analogy, um, and make sure that wherever wherever those applications are coming through, they're coming into your environment. You need to take ownership. And that is why having proper planning, proper training, and have proper policies for for what the proper controls are that govern all of the application development, not just what's coming through the IT organization, but what might be coming through departmental development organizations. And as your organization gets larger and you have a larger organization, that sprawl of of and governance becomes much more difficult because you have different developers that are using different technologies to develop, and how we maintain and manage those policies and controls are important. So it's working with stakeholders within all of those groups, and really is a top-down approach to protection. We need to govern the policies and security controls and then make sure that there are information barriers in place, that all those controls are in place, and we are monitoring and managing all of that to remediate threats and to look for threats, having strong security posture management. The ability within Microsoft Defender for Cloud to control and to control security posture on things like a GitHub repo with GitHub security and those capabilities that were just announced at Ignite a couple weeks ago. Those are all creating that stronger approach and that ability to allow organizations to do more with less, but still maintain that security for was everything and everyone everywhere, right? That was that key message within Microsoft Ignite. Again, robust security approach. I can't stress this enough. Having an identified security, an identified approach, and again, a documented approach to how low code, no code is handled and what the security parameters mean. And hopefully I've given everybody a little bit of something to think about in this presentation of what some of those areas are when you're talking to your organization, or if you're a consultant talking to organizations that are using power apps, or utilizing those low code or infrastructure type capabilities. What are you documenting? What is the documented controls that is being required for that's for proper security benchmark and the proper security baseline? It doesn't, it starts with documentation, a top-down approach, training, getting in front of all of these maybe departmental developers as well. I've had conversations, and just kind of bring a use case in here around not necessarily low code, no code development per se, but the departmental development approach. Departments have applications that they're working on, and it might not be a company-wide application. It might be something specific to a particular business function within an organization. Maybe it's different different organizations in a merger acquisition situation. They're developing these applications and they want to adopt cloud technologies. They want to get these applications off of physical servers, physical hosts. They want to, they're working on a data center exit. So they want to take these applications to Azure or to another cloud provider. The CISO and the security team, this is one thing that's keeping them up at night, because these groups within the organization, if it's a large organization, and especially if it's a highly regulated organization, are having these groups come to them saying, hey, you've got a policy in place that before this application goes to migrate to the cloud, we need to review this with you. So you need to, I need you, your department to evaluate this application for proper security, proper compliance, proper regulatory, and we are going to before we put this into the cloud. Uh, most security teams within an organization uh, are there's still a big gap in terms of understanding and knowledge around cloud security and cloud controls. So what they have to do in a lot of cases is hire a consultant. That consultant then charges them and they spend a month, maybe more, evaluating this application, going through all of the checks and balances to make sure that this application is going to be compliant and secure in the cloud. And so the security group and that CISO then starts getting criticized or being told that this is taking too long. We need this application out now. We built a business plan that in 2 weeks we're going to have this application on the cloud. Now, that's obviously very aggressive, but just kind of painting a picture here that, okay, the goals of the business or of that department don't align with the capabilities of the security office. So we need to now try to align those better and find ways to automate and to look at how we can have the documented control first and foremost, so that when they're developing these applications, that they have those controls within their application from the beginning of their development process, rather than just saying, okay, this is how we develop that infrastructure and we go into and we can get into the cloud. We need to say, okay, these identify the controls that are required, and then and document that and share that with all of those departments, so that when they bring that application to us, it's already maybe a good portion of the way done. Then we can run proper testing and checks and have an automated process to make sure that all those controls are in place, and have it aligned with our solutions that we're utilizing for security posture management, have all the logging in place for events and activity logs that are going to our SIM and our dashboards, so that then once that goes live and goes online, we can monitor continuous compliance in those areas. So that's just kind of one use case that I've seen around this struggle that we're talking about here today, and really it gets into into kind of a lot of other struggles that maybe some of you have seen or been involved in, but create first and foremost, and really, if you don't take if you take one thing away from this, it's really you have to insert yourself as a security professional into the discussion with these groups from a top-down approach, and work with them on identifying the processes and the procedures and the baseline controls. If we don't have baseline controls and baseline requirements within our organization that is communicated, and that the different departments and different parts of our organization aren't educated on, we are putting ourselves in a very tenuous situation for protecting our organization. So that brings us to the end of my presentation. Finished a little bit early here, but I hope maybe there's some questions that anybody wants to ask. I've been looking at the chat there. I haven't seen any in the chat, but my PowerPoint has decided to slow down on me here. But it's just a question slide. But any questions out there in the audience?